Have you ever looked at your marriage and wondered why it feels like a blessing and a lesson at the same time? Have you ever asked yourself whether you chose your spouse, or whether your life somehow chose for you? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are stepping into a question that many people whisper in private, but rarely explore with real honesty. Why did you marry this person? And we are going to explore it through a simple but deep lens often described as 3 types of karma in marriage. Not as a way to trap you in fate, not as a way to label your spouse, but as a way to understand the invisible forces that shape attraction, commitment, conflict, healing, and the turning points where relationships either mature into wisdom or collapse into repetition. I want to hold the truths from the beginning so you can relax into this conversation. First, karma does not mean you are doomed. Karma means patterns. Patterns can be transformed. Second, marriage is not only romance. Marriage is a spiritual classroom. It is where your attachments get exposed. Your wounds become visible. Your selfishness gets challenged. Your compassion gets tested. And your capacity for awakening grows, if you are willing. Now let me tell you a story, because the best way to understand karmic threads is to watch them move through a life. In this story there is someone named Arjun. Arjun is not trying to be a saint. He is a normal person who wants a good life. He wants stability, love, laughter, a home that feels safe. He grew up watching a marriage that looked respectable from the outside but felt emotionally distant on the inside. No big explosions, no scandals, just 2 people living in parallel and calling it partnership. Arjun promised himself he would do better. He would marry for love. He would marry someone who felt like a friend and a companion, not just a social arrangement. Then he met someone named Lena. Lena was bright, practical, and warm in a way that made Arjun feel instantly calmer. She was not flashy. She was not chaotic. She was steady. When she looked at him, he felt understood without having to perform. Their conversations were easy. Their values seemed to match. They laughed at similar things. They both wanted a stable home. So they married. At first it felt like destiny. People said they were a perfect match. Their families approved. Their routines fit. Their future looked clear. Then the real marriage began. Not the wedding. The marriage. The daily reality where your nervous system shows up. Your childhood shows up. Your habits show up. Your fears show up. Your unspoken expectations show up. Within a year, Arjun noticed a pattern that confused him. Lena was loving, but she also had a sharp edge when she felt stressed. She could become critical quickly. Not cruel, but cutting. Arjun hated criticism. Criticism made him shut down. So when Lena criticized, Arjun withdrew. When Arjun withdrew, Lena felt alone. When Lena felt alone, she criticized more. The loop began. Arjun started asking the same question many people ask quietly. Why did I marry this person if it feels like we keep triggering each other? And this is where the 3 karmic threads begin to make sense. Because people rarely marry only for one reason. They marry because multiple invisible forces combine. One thread can feel like debt. One can feel like duty. And one can feel like a gift. In real life, these threads weave together so tightly that you can confuse them. You can think the gift is the debt. You can think the duty is a prison. You can think the debt is destiny. But when you see them clearly, you can choose wisely. Let us explore them through Arjun and Lena's story. The first karmic thread is what we can call karmic debt. Debt does not mean punishment. Debt means unfinished learning. It means an old pattern that keeps repeating until you change your response. In marriage, karmic debt often shows up as the exact conflict you keep having that never fully resolves. It shows up as the same wound getting touched again and again. It shows up as the same emotional reaction, rising even when you promised yourself you would be calmer next time. For Arjun, the debt was his shutdown response. When he felt criticized, he vanished emotionally. He would become quiet, cold, distant, logical, busy. He told himself he was being mature because he was not yelling. But his silence was not peace. His silence was avoidance. It was the same strategy he learned as a kid. When tension rose at home, he learned to disappear inside himself. That was his karmic debt, not something the universe was punishing, something his nervous system was repeating. For Lena, the debt was her criticism response. When she felt anxious, she tried to control the environment with words. She corrected. She pointed out. She tightened her tone. She told herself she was being responsible because she was naming problems. But she was not naming with tenderness. She was naming with fear. And fear can sound like judgment. That was her karmic debt, her learned strategy. So why did they marry each other? Because their debts fit, not because they wanted pain. Because the unconscious seeks a familiar battlefield. A person who shuts down often pairs with a person who pushes. A person who pushes often pairs with a person who withdraws. The pair creates a loop. The loop feels inevitable. The loop feels like fate, but it is simply pattern meeting pattern. Karmic debt in marriage is the relationship forcing you to face the exact pattern you could avoid while single. When you are single, you can hide your shutdown by being busy. When you are single, you can hide your criticism by focusing on work. But marriage brings the pattern to the center of the room. This is why some people say marriage is a spiritual furnace. It heats you until the impurities show up. Not to shame you, to purify you. Now, here is the second karmic thread, karmic duty. Duty does not mean obligation that destroys you. Healthy duty means responsibility. It means the relationship asks you to grow up. It asks you to practice. It asks you to develop virtues you do not naturally practice when life is easy. Karmic duty in marriage can look like learning patience, learning consistency, learning honesty, learning service, learning boundaries, learning to repair after conflict, learning to communicate without violence, learning to care without controlling. For Arjun, duty meant learning presence, staying in the room when feelings rise, listening without defending, speaking truth instead of hiding, taking responsibility for the impact of silence. For Lena, duty meant learning softness, expressing needs without attacking, asking clearly instead of criticizing, regulating anxiety without turning it into control. Neither of them wanted to hear that at first, because duty sounds like work, and people want love to feel effortless. But here is the spiritual truth. Love is effortless as a feeling sometimes. Relationship is not effortless as a practice. If you refuse the practice, your love becomes a story that cannot survive reality. So the marriage was asking them to practice. That was their duty thread. Now here is the third karmic thread. Karmic gift. Gift does not mean perfection. Gift means grace. It means the relationship contains a medicine, a support, a light that helps you become more yourself. Gift can be the way your partner brings out your best. Gift can be the way you learn joy, devotion, friendship, laughter, teamwork, spiritual discipline. Gift can be the way your partner mirrors your goodness and helps you trust life again. Arjun and Lena did have gifts. Lena brought structure to Arjun's life. She helped him become more grounded. She cared about health, family. She made home feel stable. That stability healed something in Arjun. Arjun brought warmth to Lena. He made her laugh. He reminded her to rest. He brought playfulness into her serious mind. That play healed something in Lena. So why did they marry? Because there was a gift, and there was a duty, and there was a debt, all at once. Now, the reason this matters is because people often misunderstand what they are experiencing. When the debt thread is loud, they think the whole marriage is wrong. When the duty thread is hard, they think love is gone. When the gift thread is sweet, they ignore the debt. They ride the sweetness and deny the pattern until the pattern explodes again. So the real wisdom is discernment. Which thread is showing up right now? Is this conflicted debt pattern repeating? Is this moment asking me for duty and practice? Is this season revealing the gift and the blessing? When you can see the thread, you stop reacting blindly. You start choosing consciously. Now let me bring you deeper into Arjun and Lena's story, because the turning point is where the teaching becomes real. One evening they fight about something small. Lena says Arjun forgot a chore. Arjun says he was busy. Lena tone sharpens. Arjun shuts down. Lena feels abandoned and raises her voice. Arjun becomes colder. The room becomes heavy. Then, something happens. Their child. In this story, they have a young child named Mira. Walks into the room quietly and looks at them with wide eyes. That look breaks them open. They suddenly see the future. If we keep living like this, our child will learn this pattern. Our child will learn criticism and shut down as love. Our child will learn fear as normal. This is where karma becomes generational. Karma is not only personal. It is inherited. It is transmitted. It is taught without words. In that moment, Arjun and Lena realize this marriage is not only about their happiness. It is also about the pattern they pass on. That realization becomes the doorway to awakening. They decide to seek help, not because they are broken, but because they want to become conscious. They begin practicing new responses. Arjun practices staying present. When he feels the urge to disappear, he names it. He says, I feel myself shutting down. I need a moment to breathe, but I am here. I will talk. I am not leaving you alone. Lena practices softening. When she feels the urge to criticize, she names the need beneath it. She says, I feel anxious and overwhelmed. I need help. I need partnership. I am asking for support. Not trying to attack you. At first it is awkward. They fail. They repeat. Then they repair. Slowly, the loop loosens. This is how karmic debt gets paid. Not by suffering longer, by changing response. This is how karmic duty gets honored. Not by pretending, by practicing. And this is how karmic gift becomes real, not as fantasy, as lived warmth. Now I want to expand this beyond one couple. Because you might be listening and thinking my marriage is nothing like theirs. Or my relationship is not married but it feels similar. Or I am not in a relationship but I want to understand what to choose. So let me describe how these three karmic threads tend to look in many lives. That thread often looks like this. You keep getting triggered in the same way. You keep having the same argument with different words. You keep choosing partners who activate the same wound. You keep feeling like you are walking on eggshells or constantly chasing. You keep apologizing for needs. You keep shrinking. You keep repeating. Duty thread often looks like this. You are being invited to mature. You are being invited to communicate clearly. You are being invited to develop patience. You are being invited to learn boundaries. You are being invited to repair after conflict. You are being invited to become responsible for your emotional life. You are being invited to stop blaming and start practicing. Gift thread often looks like this. You feel supported. You feel safe. You feel seen. You feel your life expanding. You feel your joy returning. You feel friendship and laughter. You feel like the relationship makes you kinder, wiser, more human. Now here is the most important part. A marriage can contain all three threads, but the balance matters. If debt is overwhelming and there is no willingness to practice duty, then the relationship becomes suffering. If duty is present but gift is absent, the relationship becomes dry and resentful. If gift is strong but debt is ignored, the relationship becomes unstable because the hidden loop will eventually return. So the secret is not to find a relationship with no debt. Every human will bring some pattern. The secret is to find willingness. Willingness is the spiritual currency that transforms everything. If both people are willing, debt becomes a lesson. Duty becomes a path. Gift becomes a home. If one person is unwilling, the other may still learn, but the marriage may not become a safe place. Now, I want to speak carefully about something sensitive. Sometimes people hear karma and think it means they must stay no matter what. No. Karma does not mean you must endure harm. If there is ongoing disrespect, humiliation, manipulation, threats, or any form of abuse, wisdom may require distance and support. Compassion includes you. Spiritual language should never be used to trap you in pain. So how do you know when the karmic lesson is staying and practicing versus leaving and completing? Watch for accountability. Do actions match words over time? Does the person repair after harm? Are apologies followed by change? Is there respect for boundaries? Is there willingness to do the work? If yes, duty practice can transform the marriage. If no, then the lesson may be self-respect and leaving. Leaving can be karmic completion, because sometimes the debt is your habit of tolerating too much. Sometimes the duty is learning to stop rescuing. Sometimes the gift is learning you can survive without begging for love. That is still spiritual growth. Now let me tell you another story to show a different angle. In this story there is someone named Priya and someone named Kunal. Priya marries Kunal because he is stable, loyal, responsible. She grew up in chaos and wanted peace. Kunal gives peace. But after a few years Priya feels numb. She feels like the relationship is functional but not alive. They never talk deeply. They avoid conflict. They also avoid intimacy. Priya wonders, did I marry wrong? But the truth is deeper. She married for stability, which was a gift. But the debt thread is her fear of emotional honesty. The duty thread is learning to speak truth and create intimacy. So Priya practices. She starts asking Kunal real questions. She starts expressing feelings. Kunal is uncomfortable at first because he also has a debt thread, avoidance, but he is willing. They learn slowly. Their marriage becomes warmer. So why did she marry him? Gift, stability, debt, avoidance, duty, honesty, all three. Now, another story. In this story there is someone named Omar who marries someone named Sana because the chemistry is wild. The attraction feels faded. The early relationship is intense. But after marriage the intensity becomes chaos. Arguments, jealousy, silent treatment, apology. Omar keeps calling it passion. Sana keeps calling it love. But their nervous systems are addicted to intensity. Debt thread is trauma repetition. Duty thread would be learning regulation and respectful communication. Gift thread might be present in moments, but it is drowned by instability. If both become willing, the marriage could transform. If not, the marriage becomes a loop. Omar eventually realizes the lesson is not to love harder. The lesson is to love wiser. He chooses to step back and seek help. Again, this is karma as cause and effect. Now, here is the deeper spiritual point behind the three threads. Marriage reveals attachment. Attachment says, you must behave in a way that makes me feel safe. Love says, I care for you. And I will also tell the truth. Attachment tries to control outcomes. Love practices presence. Attachment clings. Love includes freedom with boundaries. So the debt thread is often attachment becoming visible. The duty thread is learning love as practice. The gift thread is what love feels like when attachment is not dominating the room. This is why the most important work in marriage is inner work. Not because you must become perfect. Because if you do not work inwardly, you keep repeating outwardly. Now let me bring it back to you with a simple reflection that can change how you see your entire relationship history. Ask yourself, what debt pattern have I repeated in love? What duty practice am I being invited into? What gift do I receive when I am present and honest? If you answer those three, you will understand why you married who you married. And you will also understand what the relationship is trying to teach you right now. Now I want to share a final closing scene with Arjun and Lena, because it shows what winning looks like in this karmic frame. Years later, they still disagree sometimes. They still trigger each other sometimes. But now, when conflict rises, Arjun catches his shutdown sooner. He breathes, He stays. He speaks. Lena catches her criticism sooner. She softens. She asks. She listens. Their child grows up watching repair. Not perfection. Repair. That is the gift of awakened marriage. Because a child does not need parents who never fight. A child needs parents who show how to return to love without violence, without coldness, without manipulation. This is how karma becomes destiny. Destiny is not a perfect relationship. Destiny is a conscious relationship. Now let me end with something you can carry. The person you marry is not only a romantic choice. It is a karmic mirror. It is a spiritual assignment. It is a chance to awaken. And whether you stay or leave, the path is the same. Choose wisdom. Choose compassion. Choose truth. Choose practice. Stop repeating what shrinks you. Start living what frees you. Thank you for spending this time with me today. I want to hear your story. Which thread do you recognize in your relationships? Debt, duty, or gift? What lesson has love been trying to teach you? And what has helped you move from repetition into awakening? Share what you feel comfortable sharing in the comments. If you want more conversations about awakening, wisdom, karma, compassion, practice, destiny, and conscious relationships, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and stay connected by commenting so this community can grow together. I will see you in the next one.